I'm going to talk to you about passive haptics, but I'm going to do it like in the context of how we do product development, immersive work. And so you'll kind of see, I have to set the stage a little bit so that you can kind of see that whole follow through. So we're using the immersive paradigm to communicate, discover, and share experiences. And these experiences, I heard the questions. I thought the last panel was great, and yay, Randy. But I heard all the questions, and a lot of them were like focused on how do you get talent, and how do you use this stuff, how do you get the data, and all that good stuff. So some of that is in this talk. But the immersive paradigm itself is a really great way to communicate a ton of information holistically and in context. And I don't know any other way right now where we can get so much across in so little bit of time with so many people. And so we came up with this concept, and my friend at Boeing there talked about asking for forgiveness. This was kind of developed along those lines where, you know, it was a really weird way of working, but now it's standard. So it's this Ford Immersive Vehicle Environment, and what it is a way where we take a data that is very high visual quality, content rich, and we share and collaborate around the globe. So you can be in Australia or in Dearborn, Michigan, and you can be in the same immersive environment at the same time. But the key is that it considers in so many of our evaluations, not only the customer, so when you're looking at a vehicle, and I'm glad I'm not just at a lectern only, and you're looking down and evaluating, it's looking at our vehicle at any stage of product development as a customer would see it, which I think is really important to always keep that customer in mind. But the other important thing in that statement is how we work. It considers not only the customer, but how Ford does product development, how Ford does manufacturing. It has those tenets embedded in the model so that we get a really holistic view. And so I want to spend just a little bit of time on visual quality. So this is what you would see if you got immersed and looked at the data. And it looks really good, but there's some pre-computation going on. So we do some, baking of, reflections and shadows and stuff to give you, just for performance, right? And so we went from that to this. So I don't know if you can kind of get that. I think it's really profound, and when you're immersed, it's even better. But the idea is that you now can see the data with real-time ray tracing. So we're looking at the data, doing reflections on the model and showing it to you in real time. And so now, like, the contour down the body looks richer and fuller. Even in 2D, this picture to me, things just pop so much more. The reflection of the pony and the front end, and I could go on and on. And then this is the same kind of thing for like the interior, so kind of the simulated reflections, and then how much better it looks when we do ray tracing. And so this is not only taking data, just vehicle geometry, CAD data, but also color and material data. What are the real measured materials? How do we apply them to the model? And then doing calculations based on the physical properties of light in the scene and presenting that to the users in the people that are doing the evaluations. So now that we have that, that's like the virtual world. There's this whole thing of the physical world. We're physical creatures. We like to touch and feel. When I would look for plates at an antique show, I always feel them to see if there's chips because it's easier to feel than it is to see them. And the same concept goes for vehicles. So people like to touch and feel and be connected and in it. So I started thinking about the physical world and how to marry those two together. So we have these little properties all around Ford. They're everywhere. People will either hack up a car, or they'll take some 80-20 extruded aluminum and throw some seats in it. And it's like, well, let's put the virtual world around that and give people an understanding of how they feel in that space. And then the idea is that I have light, simple, and specific. It's really simple to have that data, to create those spaces. We can take other vehicle parts and stick them in those models, or we can take them, and just create something new. And then the simpler we can make it, the better we are. And then the more specific we make it, it's easier for you to feel that when you reach for that thing, it's exactly where it should be. So you're looking at something very plain and ordinary and kind of ugly in the real world, but in the virtual world, you're seeing what I showed you on those other slides. So you get a very rich experience with a very little bit of effort in the physical world. And so this is like the basic idea behind it. So you take the Ford, get it? The subject is a Ford. Everybody laugh. I thought I was really funny. Thank you. I'm here all week. No, I'm just kidding. But you take the person and then you register them, like you track where they're at, but then you also take the property and marry that to the digital data. And then you kind of do the same thing vertically. So you get the person in the thing and then the virtual data in with the virtual representation of the human, and you combine those two, and they can see that world, but then they can touch and feel, and you give them a representation of their hands, so they know what they're touching, and it becomes a very profound experience. And so the point here is for passive haptics, the benefits are pretty great. So we were doing some studies and I saw people like reaching for steering wheels and like sitting in office chairs or grabbing Wiimotes, like something like this, and saying, this is where my hands are at the wheel in the cave. And I'm like, that just can't be, we can't do that. And so the picture on the right, the little video that's playing, it's just like a super simple property with just a steering wheel, but you can see that like there's so much more that we can do with that data with just a little bit of a property in there. And so the idea is to build up an experience and to break down an experience. And so we should be able to drill down in any of the verticals that we do, the functions for engineering, designing, doing ergo, whatever it is. But we should also use the immersive environment to talk across those disciplines so that somebody who is a manufacturing process engineer can have a conversation with somebody from the design studio, and they can speak the same language. So everybody knows what a vehicle looks like and what it's supposed to do and what a customer would get. But it takes for an engineer, it takes the Excel spreadsheet and it brings it to life. And for the artist, it takes the concepts of the volumetric concepts that they have and it brings them to life. So it allows these people with not totally, but very different mindsets to communicate in a common environment. And it's really cool when it works out well. So I have some examples of what that's like. So this is an example of like literally doing a CAE analysis of defrost patterns. So you could get in that vehicle and you could watch the defrost happen, and then you can see when that little window is where you could see, and then we could try to improve the speed and the area by which that defrosts so that we get a better result sooner. We use the technology to simulate time of day. So this guy is immersed, and you can see he's pointing at something in the rear of the vehicle, and he's in a nighttime scene. So he is seeing that vehicle at night in Berlin, I think it is, and then he can switch to day, and he can look at that same surface and see what's going on with not only with real-time ray tracing and getting that really good look at the data, but then when you add different lighting and environmental models to it, it really starts to change it up a little bit. We use the tech for storytelling. So this is an example of a virtual physical interaction where you were basically almost seated on a ground, because this is a Ford GT, which is like yay high off the ground. And so you sat in a GT seat and you had a steering wheel, and then you went through this experience and you learned about the making of the GT. So this was really about how to tell other people about some of the good work that's going on at Ford. And in this case, it was taken out. One of our chief designers, the head of interiors for Ford, taught a master class. And he went around the world trying to inspire young people to enter into automotive design. And so he taught this master class, and then this was part of the experience that they were shown. And then you can take that data, not only run your hands across a physical model, right? We could take a clay and you can like run your hands down it, but then we can, in the virtual world, register those two together and then show you what those character lines look like. So one moment you're looking at that beautiful Mustang I showed you earlier, and the next moment we just changed the mode, and now you're looking at, you know, the character lines and the surface continuity and all those other cool things. Take the data and then apply it to a real physical vehicle. So this is a carryover, like an older Fusion that we overlaid data on using HoloLens. And that is really great because it is secure and it is responsive and it works in any location that we have these vehicles in. So we can just, you know, have these HoloLenses out, and so we're, you know, looking a lot at that tech. I just also want to say, just as when HoloLens came into Ford, I was like, okay, you know, I need to get with somebody in IT. Hey, Randy, how you doing? Randy was part of that too, and we were talking about how we get HoloLens in, because here we want to bring in this device into the studios of Ford, where that's like the most top secret place, and it has these outward-facing cameras that are constantly scanning the environment, and then, oh yeah, by the way, it sends all your data up to the cloud. Yeah, no problem. So that was one of those things where the technology is slightly scary in a lot of ways, but you know, there was a good amount of trust in what, you know, Randy and I were working on with that. So, you know, all's well that ends well. And then another key point I want to make is anywhere that we have those physical properties that are out and about at Ford, we should be able to get immersed and see the data at any point. And most of the tech that I showed you, most of the pictures I showed, are from a solution that is not a game engine. But game engines do have their place, and it is wise to employ them at certain spots. And so I think that the tech itself, we should be able to use wherever the people are that need to use it. So we need to democratize that tech and have it available where the people are working and with what they're doing. So that is happening now, and there are like headsets around Ford, hither and yon, that are really tied to models and that have a way of working that we can work. So the idea is to take data. This is a crash, and it's actually like crashing that model, and we don't want you to like get in like a virtual crash, but the idea is to just have another way of studying what happens during that event, and how are things propagating as that vehicle hits the barrier, and then what can you learn? So this is like literally slicing through the vehicle in real time as it's going boom into the wall. And so it's not a, it's really about the third person perspective in this case. It's not about like being in it, and it's not a safety thing. It's an insight into the data that was produced during from other methods in CAE. And then tying those two worlds together, I just wanted to show that this is like early on work. You can see that's like a DK2, so that's like a while ago. But if you look at the property there, that's literally some styrofoam that's milled out in an IP, and then it's got just some part of it that's hogged out where we put controls in that function that we can use. But I felt like I was in an F-150. It's like remarkable. You're sitting up and forward and high, and I'm looking around, and even though that was before the trackers were working very well, so we had markers on the front, so it's kind of funny when I look at it now, but you get the idea of how good that is. But I would see this, so I can get outside or inside the vehicle and look at really beautiful data, and then be able to slice through. So the thing I wanted to leave you or tell you about with this picture, and I think I represent it here, is the amount of data that's in these models is pretty large. So it has a lot of integrity. We take whatever we get at any point in the process, and we put it in and we build these models, and then Ford does that as a matter of course of business, and then we take those virtual vehicles that are made and then put them in the immersive environment with a bunch of other attributes and allow our users to see it. So every nut and bolt, everything, the model isn't decimated. It is translated from the original format, the original CAD format. But besides that, it's really what we get and then how we're looking at it. So if you can think about this picture and then think about having that engineer communicate with the artist, you can see how much more impactful this would be to have that discussion. And so the idea is that what we're looking at is using design thinking with a human-centric approach. So trying to bring you and your perspective and your idea into the design of the product, and then represent the customer's view and perspective in that product, and then see and understand somebody else's perspective and bring that into the product. And so it's really about this way of sharing and communicating and just connecting on a basic level to get to the fundamentals of what the problem is. The technology, the 5 tech that I have talked about, we did about 800 reviews in 2017, and those were requests. They're not, it's part of Ford's product development process to use this tech. So every vehicle that Ford makes with a level of change a customer can see uses this tech. But the thing that's really good about it is they want to. It's not something we have to beat over their heads. Have you done your review yet? What are you going to do? When are you going to come in? We're actually ramping up the tech and building new immersive centers and trying to grow the tech because it is seen as very valuable. It is very much a problem-solving technology. It's also a time-saving technology for the people that use it. So it's going pretty well. So I just wanted to leave you with this little video. And if you look, this is like a hacked up Mustang. And don't pay attention to his movements because we're asking him to do these weird movements so that you can kind of see on that little monitor. But what we're doing is if you notice, he is taking a 3D printed control and he is moving it from one location to another location. And when he moves it from one to the other, it changes its function based on where it is in the vehicle. And so we can make our vehicles do what they should do. And it takes the immersive experience from a passive experience where you're, kind of, I would watch people and they'd have their hands on their lap and they'd be like looking around in the environment. And now they can do, and they can branch their narrative. They can understand more completely. They can make things function like they should. We can add in physical attributes of switch feel and function that we couldn't before. And it really has helped us move our paradigm from just that look and see kind of thing to look, see, and do, because that's what people do in their vehicle. And so putting all that together, I think, is a really powerful combination And it's kind of an interesting take on wearables, but I wanted to just throw that out there because I think it's something that it puts together 3D printing, high-end visual quality, AR, VR, physical models. I mean, there's a whole host of electronics like microcontrollers. You put it all together and you get this really rich experience, and that technology is like taking off very well. So that's what I had for you, and I really thank you for your time.